at the end of the day, the things that are meant for us, the things that are our purpose, they're already ours. Inner voice is basically guiding us towards those things that are already ours. But so by not listening, we're actually doing a disservice, not just to ourselves, but to the world, by depriving the world of the unique gifts that we have to offer, that only we can offer. The fact that we are here in this world means that we have a unique purpose of being here. There's meaning to it. There's a purpose behind it. And our voice, our inner voice, is the compass that leads us there. It's the GPS to get to our purposes and our unique gifts. And so when we don't listen to that, we're going off course.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Hi, my dear friend. On this International Women's Day week, the theme is Break the Bias. And that means imagining a gender-equal world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. Imagining a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And imagining a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Collectively, we can all break the bias. And with this podcast and its messages, we hope to spread these messages to you as well. It's so appropriate to have as our guest on this important week, Samra Zafar. If there is one podcast interview you should listen to of the many that I've conducted, it is this one. I was so inspired by Samra's story of resilience after being forced into a child marriage and suffering years of abuse. Many of us would have given up after such trauma, but instead, Samra believed in her dreams and not only achieved them, but is motivating millions of women around the world who also may be suffering to stand up for their own rights and not only survive, but thrive. Enjoy this wonderful and inspiring conversation, and don't forget to break the bias in this world in your own way. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm so thrilled you're here, spending your time with us. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play. We are dedicated to help you rediscover your inner power and purpose in this next chapter of your life. If you're asking yourself, what's next? You are on the right place, my friend. Here, I give my own insights and interview incredible women every week who will give you examples of how to face the obstacles in your way and take that next step towards reinvention. I am so honored to have on the show today a woman whose story may leave you in tears, but will inspire you, as it did me, to realize that anything is possible if you stay focused on your dreams. I'm happy to welcome today Samra Zafar. Before I give you Samra's bio, I'd like to share one quote from her, which I believe really sums it up. And it goes like this. Decades ago, my dreams of getting an education were snatched away from me when I was forced into a child marriage and told I couldn't go to school. Today, I was officially welcomed into my third degree by one of the top medical schools in the world as I embark on the journey to becoming the best physician I can be. That really resonated with me, so I had to share it. But let me just get into your bio. You are an award-winning international speaker, best-selling author, consultant, educator, and entrepreneur who advocates for gender equity, inclusion, and human rights. Samra has been recognized among the top 100 most powerful women in Canada and a top 25 Canadian immigrant. Her book, A Good Wife, Escaping the Life I Never Chose, is an international bestseller and named among CBC's Best Books of 2019, and is now being adapted to a premium TV series. She is one of the youngest alumni governors at the University of Toronto, a celebrated ambassador for Plan International, and a board member for Women's College Hospital Foundation. So, wow, thank you so much, Samra, for coming to the show, and I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yes, me too. As I read, your journey is an incredible one and so inspiring for so many people. And I had mentioned it previously. One of your articles, you wrote that when we believe in our dreams fiercely and refuse to give up, we can achieve anything we set our minds to. So if you could please, I know I mentioned it briefly, but if you could please tell our audience a little bit about your story and how did you continue to pursue your dreams despite so many obstacles in your way?
Oh my gosh. It seems like a journey of a lifetime, which really it has been. I was always a very ambitious girl. Growing up, when I was told that I can't go to school because my dreams are not valid, or I shouldn't dream too big, or I shouldn't have all these big ambitions, I was always like trying to push the envelope, like starting a girls' cricket team in my school, or writing articles about gender equality in the tiny school newspaper that I had created. So I was always trying to push the envelope and challenge those kinds of things. So I didn't really think that something like this would happen to me. But at the age of 16, I was forced into marriage with a man who was much older than me and then shipped off from Pakistan to Canada as his child bride. And under the promise of that I would be able to continue my education here in Canada. But those were all false promises. And over the next decade, there was a lot of abuse and oppression and humiliation that I was subjected to. And it took me many years to be able to fight my way out of it and then eventually go to university and complete my education as a single mother and working multiple jobs to make ends meet while I was doing that and raising my kids single-handedly. It was when I graduated from the University of Toronto as a top student and winning a lot of awards and scholarships that I really had no hope of ever being able to get to that level of success. In my wildest dreams, I just wanted to get a degree and a job so I could put food on the table for my children.
Right.
But something about that moment and that time really spoke to my heart that this isn't just my story. This is sadly the story of millions and millions of women and girls around the world who continue to suffer and struggle in silence. And I wanted to do my part to make a difference. And that's when I started sharing my story. And that started this whole journey of advocacy and speaking work. And now has led me to medical school, which and every day I just feel like I'm getting started.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Firstly, just getting the first degree is incredible, but now here you are in medical school. And one of the things that we talk about here is that a lot of women, they have so many dreams. Like you had the dream of getting your education, but then the obstacles that are put in your way. And many women feel that they are not good enough. They have limiting beliefs about themselves, whatever they have in their head that stops them in their tracks from actually going for their dreams. So what would you say to those women based on your experience?
We are the ones who often stand in our way the most. And all those fears, I'm not invalidating them. They're legitimate, they're valid fears. We have certainly concerns, fears of uncertainty. We don't know what lies ahead. We have responsibilities. And I remember every time I've made a decision in my life, especially as a mother, that's been my biggest focus. Like, am I going to be fair to my children? Even just now when I applied to med school, like, am I being fair to my kids by leaving behind a very stable and lucrative career to now become a student and maybe in a financial wave and a bit of a setback for the next few years until I'm able to practice as a physician? So all those concerns and that fears are valid. But at the end of the day, life is all about choices. And in those moments when you are afraid, what is the choice you're going to make? Are you going to let the fear prevail and say, I'm too afraid, or this is too hard, this is too difficult, I'm not going to do it? Or are you going to say, yes, I'm terrified, it feels very scary, but I believe in this so much and I'm going to do it anyway. And I'll figure it out, whatever comes next. And I think those choices determine the course of our life. Whenever we choose courage over fear, and again, let me define courage a little bit, because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is, yes, I'm afraid, but I believe in this, so I'm going to do it anyway. So whenever we choose courage over fear, we build our resilience muscle and we build our courage muscle, and then it becomes like a habit. And now I think after all these years of choosing to take the path that I believe in and living my truth, even when it's scary as hell, I think it's become second nature. So I thrive out of it. I feel energized when I'm looking at new goals and dreaming new dreams and figuring out how to make those dreams come true.
Yes.
So it's about that conviction. And we often feel like we don't have all our ducks in a row. We don't have all the answers. We don't need to have all the answers. We can never have all the answers. I mean, look at the time we're living right now in the pandemic. You know, in 2020, I had this vision that I'm going to have a full-time speaking and writing business, and it's going to keep flourishing. And then suddenly everything got wiped out, and my calendar that was booked for a year completely got wiped out, right? So no one could have predicted this. So the key is not in having all the answers and having some kind of a crystal ball that you can look into and predict the future. The key is to be adaptable, and that no matter what comes, you'll go through it. And because you have the tools to figure out whatever life throws at you. And having that faith and conviction in your abilities to figure things out. And that gives us that extra bit of inspiration, internal inspiration, because it comes from within us that we need to really take that next step towards whatever we're working towards.
Absolutely. I love what you say. We talk about faith, conviction, and I think what I say, and I completely agree with you, is it's the choices we make, right? So you can have fear can be kind of like a car, like it can be the gas that it propels you forward, or it can be the brakes that stop you in your tracks, right? And I love the fact, and that's what I always say, is that, and I was, in my experience, that I was similar. I left a very comfortable career to go into entrepreneurship, and it was scary. But I often tell women that, like you said, it's about taking that first step. And the first step, you don't have to see the whole stairway ahead of you, but as long as you take that first step, then, like you said, it becomes like second nature to you, and it's almost exciting because you don't really have to know everything, but you have the conviction in yourself. So that's how you kind of got through all these obstacles in your way. Is that the main thing that got you through?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't, again, like, it was never that I wasn't afraid. In fact, I was terrified when I was leaving my marriage. I was terrified when I was in school and applying for the first time to university. I was terrified, and so all those things were terrifying. And I had a lot of doubts and a lot of imposter syndrome. This one story that I like to tell, that even in my darkest of days, which were the first sort of 5 years of my marriage, were the absolute worst time of my life. I was locked inside a house in Mississauga all the time. I was not allowed to go out, make any friends, have any kind of support system and agency. I was humiliated, assaulted, and insulted every single day. I had no freedom and no friends, no support system. And my life was a very, very dark place. And those were days when there were times when I didn't even want to go on living. But even in those days when I had no hope of ever being able to get out of that situation, of ever being able to go to school, I thought my life was over. There were times when I would stand in front of a mirror with a piece of paper in my hand rolled up like a fake decree, and I would practice my graduation speech that I would one day deliver.
Oh my God.
And I did deliver that exact speech as the top student at U of T a decade later. Wow. So it is that choice. Am I going to succumb and just give up? Or am I going to keep fighting? Because if I don't fight for my dreams, then who will?
Who will? Yeah.
Right. So it's that internal belief. Like, there will be many times in life when you will be the only person advocating for yourself. There will be times when the whole world will be against you. And there will be moments, and many, many moments, when you will be tempted to think and fall into that trap where you think that everybody's saying this, so I'm the crazy one because I'm the lone voice in this crowd, right? Everybody telling me my dreams weren't valid. I started to question my own dreams and goals. Everybody telling me this is the box a good wife or a good woman is supposed to fit into. And I started questioning my worth as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
When people tell you that your life is worthless and you're worthless, you start internalizing it, especially people who are supposed to love you and care for you, and people who are supposed to have your best interests at heart. So it's oftentimes we are surrounded by people who are naysayers. Like when you go into entrepreneurship, you start something new, people will say you can't do it. People will throw all kinds of reasons at you of why it won't work. But the rule that I hold super close to my heart is that when people tell you you cannot do something, they are showing you their limits, not yours. Because they can't see themselves doing it. And that's what they're trying to tell you. So
interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
My response to that is, I believe I can do it. The only person I need permission from is me.
Right.
And to those people, my answer is always, watch me. Watch me do it. And when I was applying to med school, I didn't tell a lot of people because I knew what people would say. And then when I got in, people were like, how did you do it? I'm like, I did because I believed in it. I took a chance and I went for it. Right. So whereas some people were like, what do you think? You're in your 30s, like you don't have a science background. How are you going to do it? Right. But it's all about having those big dreams and keeping your eyes on that next step. What you just said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, but you see the next step and you just take it with that faith that it will keep going, and you take it one day at a time, one step at a time. And soon you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, I've come so far.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that today. It's the second season of this podcast. And I didn't know how to podcast 2 years ago. I love what you say, because there's always going to be naysayers in our lives. And listening to that inner voice, I think that we all have, is so important. And that voice that tells you that I want to do this and I can do this. And whether or not people around you support you or not, as long as you believe that, I think that's so important. And you talked a little bit earlier about these boxes that we put ourselves in, or the boxes that society puts ourselves in. And it's so true, especially for women, because we have played so many different roles in our lives. We mother, we're spouse, we're caregiver, and we do what's expected of us, but then often we forget who we are in the process. So I encourage women to listen to that little voice. And I guess we just talked about it, but any other thoughts on that? And I believe that each person is so unique, and it's almost a disservice, like you're doing. You wanted to get into med school, you wanted to pursue education. If you didn't do it, that's a disservice to the world. So I guess I'm agreeing with you, but I'm also wondering, what other thoughts do you have about the roles that women play and the power of listening to our inner voice?
I am such a firm believer of practice, and it's not going to happen overnight. You have to actively, deliberately practice listening to your inner voice. And with women, we have been cultured and conditioned by society, by religion, oftentimes by just the way patriarchy and our social structures work, that our voice doesn't matter. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like and then we get to a stage in life where we realize that all those people were lying. Now we have to unlearn those beliefs, and we have to learn for the first time how to actually start trusting our voice. See, when we're born as children, we are always we don't question those things. If you're hungry, we cry for food. We poop, we go poop. So we are always trusting our instincts. But then as we keep growing up, we are surrounded by these messages that, no, don't do this, or this is wrong, or fit into this gender box, don't dream too big. And we grow up as girls and become women who are always taught and always focused on putting others' needs before our own. Right. Putting other people's priorities before our own. We become someone's daughter, we become someone's wife, we become someone's sister, someone's mother, right? But we are someone.
Yes.
We don't have to be attached to a service role to someone to be worthy on our own. We are complete human beings. without having any of those gender roles or any of those people attack. We're not a fringe benefit to someone else's existence, right? So when we realize that, like, I love being a mom, I love my daughters, but they don't define who I am. I am Samra. I'm whole. I'm one in my own. And then yes, they're an extension of my identity, but they're not my identity.
They're not your identity. Yes.
So when we start thinking that way, and then we're like, oh my God, and I've listened to all these people, but I've muted my inner voice. And I think in my life, there were so many times when I did mute my inner voice, but it always kept coming back. This doesn't feel right. Maybe there is a way I can go to school. Maybe I shouldn't be giving up on my dreams. Like I said, I would stand in front of a mirror and practice my graduation speech. So that was that inner voice, even though 99% of the time I was surrounded by all this like negative talk.
Yes.
But there were little, I would say, nudges. Hey,
yes.
Maybe, right? And I think over the course of time, that voice became louder, and I started to think maybe I should listen to that voice instead of listening to all these voices around me. I should listen to the voice inside of me. And eventually, when I came out of the marriage and built a life, and I realized, wow, all those people who told me I can't survive on my own, like, it was all lies. Look where I am today. And especially in the past sort of 5-6 years, I've really cultivated that habit through practice. Like, I'll tell you the story of how I decided to go to medical school. So
yes,
I had been, because that's a perfect story about listening to that inner voice.
Sure.
Doing this advocacy, speaking, writing work for years, and sharing my story. And more I got interested in mental health, and especially women's mental health. And I knew that I wanted to do something in that field. So, but I was working in the banking sector. I was making good money. I was giving my daughters a good life after like so many years of instability and living in poverty and whatnot. So I was afraid. I was like, no, it's not going to make sense for me to go back to school and stuff. So I was kind of like, yeah, I'll do my banking stuff to pay the bills. And I have this speaking and writing work on the side that gives me that fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
But I just felt like there was a missing piece. And then the pandemic happened, and it gave us all this pause. Right. And it was like, you go from, I always call it like, we're always in do mode. We're doing, right? We're like in this hamster in a hamster wheel that's just constantly going around. And then we were forced to pause.
Yes.
And we went from do mode to be mode.
Right.
When we're actually being with ourselves. And it gave me a lot of time to reflect that is this what I want my life to look like? Do I want to sit there 10, 20 years down the road and think, why didn't I take a chance sooner? Why didn't I take a chance on myself? So I need to do some real soul searching. So I packed in the trunk of my SUV, a couple of pillows, a blanket, water, some basic supplies. And I just took off without any itinerary, any plan where I'm going. And I ended up spending a month road tripping on my own around Quebec.
Really?
This was August 2020.
Wow. So, okay.
And I wouldn't have any plan of where I'm going to go. I just, okay, this looks like a nice place on the map. Let's go there. And then when I get to their place, I'll see if I can find a hotel. If not, I'll sleep in my car. And there were a couple nights I did sleep in my car. And as I went, and my focus, my promise to myself when I started off on this journey was, I'm going to actively practice acting on my intuition. If I want to go down a detour, I'm going to take it. I'm not going to talk myself out of it. Oh no, I'm going to be late for my next reservation, or I'm going to be late to the next town or something, because that's exactly what the mode I'm trying to get out of. If I feel something, I'm going to do it without questioning it, without talking myself out of it, without trying to rationalize it. And it was miraculous how quickly it became a habit within a few days of doing that. Because the first few times I had to like, oh, I want to go there, but no, I'm like, let's keep about no. And I would actually turn around and go to that detour that I felt like taking. And then I would find this beautiful sunset spot, or I would find someone sitting at the beach that I would talk to, and they would tell me about some other place that I should go to. And so I just kept going on as I was going and creating this trip. And it was like co-creating with the universe almost. And as it became a habit, and I was listening to a lot of these audiobooks as well about trusting yourself and your inner voice. So towards the end of the trip, I had already decided that I'm going to change my career. I still was like, what is it going to be? I wasn't sure, but I would think, okay, maybe psychology, social work, I don't know what. And then I was listening to this book about trauma and healing from trauma. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a fantastic book.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how adverse childhood effects, like domestic abuse, sexual violence, child marriage, things like that, affect us and change the blueprint of our brain and the way we conduct ourselves in lives later on, and a lot of unconscious patterns that hold us back.
Right.
And it was an incredible book written by this phenomenal psychiatrist who's a trauma specialist. And I was listening to this book, and it was just answering so many of the questions that I'd been looking for answers to in my own life. Like, why do I do this? Why am I always afraid of new connections? Why do I have a distrust of women? Because I grew up with women around me who were such patriarchal agents, or, those kinds of things. And I was like, oh my God, that's what's happening in my brain. And then towards the end of the book, there was a sentence that he says, and I was driving on this highway when he said this sentence, that all great treatment and research starts with a me search. And when you're looking for answers for what happened to you, you unlock a lot of the answers that the world needs to heal. And I'm kidding you not, I had to actually pull over to the side because I had goosebumps and shivered. Yeah. And I just knew in that moment that this is going to be the career that I want to be in. And because I have such lived experience with trauma and healing, and I often wonder, after everything that I've been through, why am I not lying under a bridge overdose somewhere? Right? What was it that I could offer to other people to not just survive through adversity and trauma, but thrive? And if I can take my lived experiences and combine that with expertise and knowledge and training and education, and take the work that I do to the next level and educate people on what's going on in their bodies and their brains and their minds using my speaking and writing work, but as an expert, not as a survivor and a thriver, also as an expert, that's the place I want to be in. And I'm going to get out of my own way. And right after that, the next week is when I started putting together my application into medical school. And it was beginning of September, and the applications were due in 3 weeks on October 1st. And I had 3 weeks to write the MCAT, put my application together, submit it, get the reference letters and everything. And I somehow got it all done. I didn't even know my MCAT score before I applied. I hit the submit button on the application, but I just somehow knew it would work. And I'm going to trust. And if it doesn't work this year, it'll work next year. I was treating it as my first kick at the can. I wasn't really counting on getting in or even an interview. And now I'm in. And it was like, it was meant to be. And yes, it was hard work. I studied and I practiced my interview skills and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, the things that are meant for us, the things that are our purpose, they're already ours. They're already, and that inner voice is basically guiding us towards those things that are already ours. But so by not listening, we're actually doing a disservice, not just to ourselves, but to the world, by depriving the world of the unique gifts that we have to offer, that only we can offer. The fact that we are here in this world means that we have a unique purpose of being here. There's meaning to it. There's a purpose behind it. And our voice, our inner voice, is the compass that leads us there. It's the GPS to get to our purposes and our unique gifts. And so when we don't listen to that, we're going off course.
Absolutely.
Right? And we are actually getting lost in the weeds when we have such a clear compass built in, right inside.
I love that story, and everything you said is just like in my heart. It just resonates with me so much, because I believe that all the answers for everything lie within us. And like you said, it's if you listen, if you take the time to really listen. And that story about you going to Quebec is such a great story. You followed your intuition, you followed your heart, you listened to that voice, and then what happens is uncannily things show up in your life. Like you listen to that book, and then things come up, and then you just automatically listen to them, and then you react to them and you act on them. And if we don't act on them, then that's on us, right?
It is absolutely on us. And we always have those nudges. All of us feel it, that feeling, or it's that sort of, I should have done this, or and we often look back and think, I should have trusted my gut. I should have trusted my intuition, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine if we could actually do it in the moment.
Yeah.
Hindsight is 20/20, but in the moment, it requires faith. It requires being okay with not knowing.
Yes.
We don't know, even though our soul might know, but our rational brain doesn't know yet because it hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
Like when I applied to med school, even though I rationally, from my intellectual brain, I'm like, yeah, there's a low chance I would be in whatever, but it just, in my deep down in my soul, I knew I was going to get in. In fact, the day that I applied, I drafted a social media post on my phone the day that I applied to med school. And that post went, I'm delighted to announce that I have been accepted into
I think it's the one I read earlier.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly that post.
Amazing. That's the power of visualization, I believe. And I talk about, you talked about it earlier, but I talk about like the inner mentor. And if you visualize, that's like you are your own mentor, and that's you listening to yourself or imagining yourself 20 years from now, or however many years from now you are. And if you visualize her in such great and vivid detail, things just show up in your life. And I wanted to ask you, in terms of finding your why, would you say that moment in your car in Quebec, was that the moment that you actually realized that was finding your why?
No, not that. It happened many, many years ago, actually. I know exactly the moment when I found my why. There's a Mark Twain quote that says, the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why you were born. It was the day when I very first time shared my story. And it was actually serendipitously, I decided to share my story after like a lot of sleepless nights and thinking, oh my God, it's too personal, it's too traumatic, what will people say, and all of that, right? And then I said, I'm gonna share it because I want to make a difference. This isn't just my story. It's a story of, like I said, millions. And it got published on my convocation day in an online blog that is very, very well followed. And I went in the morning and got my degree, which was an incredibly emotional moment for me because I had been literally like fighting for this for over a decade. And then I came home and I was living on campus housing, and my divorce was in the process. And at that time, came home and I logged into my social media. It was flooded with thousands of messages from people all over the world who in the space of maybe 4 hours had read that blog. And they were telling me about how much my story resonated with them, how they have been through it, how they know someone who's been through it. People with completely unrelated experiences, but similar journeys. Like I lost my job and I have been so depressed, but I just read your story and I'm like, it's never too late to go after my dreams, and I'm going to apply to university and reinvent myself. Or my mother, she's lived all her life for us, and I'm now going to encourage her to pursue her own dreams and goals. So many incredible people and their stories. And I sat there and read each and every single one of those messages that replied to each and every single one of them. And that is the day where I found my why. And I knew that I will never stop. And every single thing that I have done from that day onwards has tied back to that why, whether it's my speaking, whether it's my writing, whether it's my career moves, and now med school. It all connects to that why, that I want to use my negative experiences as a positive force for good and for change and for humanity and for love in this world and healing.
Wow. It is so important. And thank you for sharing that. I completely agree with you with respect to the power of sharing our stories, which you shared about your abusive marriage and escape from it. You've become a public speaker and you're educating people around equity and mental health and human rights. And you've also founded a nonprofit called Brave Beginnings. And now, as you said, you're focusing on mental health as a physician. That's what you want to do. So Tell me from your experience why you believe it is so important for people to share their stories.
I think stories are what makes us human, right? We all have unique stories, and that's what makes us so real and authentic. I think without stories, we're just going to be assembly line robots.
Yeah.
Stories are the way we learn, how we share, we grow. I'm a storyteller, and whenever I do my talks and speeches, whenever I tell a story to bring home a point for my audience, it's so much powerful than reading research or anything else off of a deck. And yes, you have research, and I'm grounded in science, but like it's to supplement what we already know as human beings, right?
Yes.
So it's just it would be a very dry and inhumane world without unique stories. And we tell stories, we show others that they're not alone, and we show them that they can they can get there too. And we unlock empathy and humanity in each other, and that's what connects us. And we realize that when we connect over those shared experiences, all the different things that supposedly divide us, like color and race and religion and culture and where we grew up or what we eat or who we love and all those things, are simply societal constructs that have no meaning. And they're things we've put upon ourselves, labels we've put upon ourselves, boxes we've tried to fit ourselves into. But actually what connects us is not those boxes. What connects us is our shared experiences and our shared humanity. And that's what stories help bring to life.
Fundamentally, internally, we are all really the same. And we want to find our purpose. We want happiness. We want to be surrounded by love. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because every week I interview women who have stories. And it's like, if we learn from people who we can see that the obstacles that they went through and learn from them, then what's better than that in order to motivate us to go through and face our obstacles, right? So thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask you about being your own hero. And you talk about, especially as somebody who might be abused, about falling into the prey of imposter syndrome and feeling of shame. And you also say that we need to put the shame where it belongs with the abusers, right? So in terms of, from your experience, what would be your biggest piece of advice for women and men who have suffered abuse, whether that's mental, physical, emotional? What is the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
Well, the biggest thing I would say is that healing is not a linear journey. You don't move on from trauma, you move on with it. And we're never, and people who say, oh, just get over it, move on, it's been so long, why are you still thinking about it, why does it still affect you? And we do it to ourselves. I used to do it, like, it's been so long since I've left my marriage, why do I still think about it, why do I still have these nightmares, why do I still, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with us. Those experiences have left permanent imprints on our brain, on our bodies, on our minds. And that healing is a lifelong journey, and it's not linear. So the days that you have weaker moments, the day you have times that you're not able to move forward, it's completely okay. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And trust your journey. Everyone's journey is unique. I used to say to myself, why did it take me 10 years to leave an abusive marriage? I should have left in the first year. But then there are women who never leave, right? There are people who are always stuck there. And I'm just grateful that I was able to leave, and I'm heartbroken for them. So we're all on our unique journeys. There's always going to be people who you would see as being ahead of you or behind you, but there's no race. There's no like this whole idea of, oh, you're so much further ahead of me. That assumes that there's like a line on which we're all sort of in line. Our journeys are twists and turns. So how can you say someone's ahead of you or behind you when you're going in different directions, right? So we're all on our own unique paths, and the setbacks, the failures, which are not really failures, I simply call them lessons, they're all part of that journey. And when you embrace it, that's when you truly start unlocking that freedom and agency that you've been craving. And our healing is really our responsibility. So even though what happened to us may not have been our fault, but our healing is our responsibility. And healing doesn't mean you heal and you move on. Healing means that you have the toolkit and the strategies to be able to help you go through the ups and downs of whatever your life may look like afterwards. So there are days when I feel I'm on top of the world, I can do anything. And there are days when I don't want to get out of bed because I've had a nightmare or a flashback about something that happened to me in my marriage. And now I'm just kind of like in a headspace where I just want to sit and cry. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Now I know that if I'm having that bad day, it doesn't mean that I have to panic because of it, or I have to call him because of it, or any of that. Knowing that, yes, it's normal to feel this way. I just need some self-love and self-care today. And I'm going to take care of myself today.
Just be kind to yourself, right?
It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay. It doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. And trust your journey. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. And seek help. There's no harm in seeking. There's no shame in seeking help. I have no shame in saying that I am in therapy. I have been in therapy for the last 10 years, and I probably will be for the rest of my life. And it's something that I treasure and value so much because it gives me my space and my person to be able to work through whatever I'm going through in that moment, at that time in my life. So reach out for help. There is support out there. And sometimes you have to get creative about it. I know it's not always affordable or accessible, but there are ways around. Whatever it is you can do to protect your inner world, that is our responsibility, and our first and foremost responsibility before we do anything for anyone else, whether it is our parents or our children or our spouses or whoever it may be. We owe it to ourselves to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's so important, that last message about seeking help, because, and I do believe that there is a lot more conversation out there, which is wonderful, and hopefully more resources for people to seek. And there should be no shame in it, as you said.
Absolutely.
Yes.
In fact, seeking help is a sign of tremendous strength.
Courage,
vulnerability,
yes.
tremendous
Absolutely.
courage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. Your story is such an inspiration. I do have one last question, though, and this one is something personal or something just from your heart. What are you most proud of, Samra? Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I'm most proud of living my truth. And I'm most proud of me and of being able to carve a life where I am really living a life that is true to who I am and true to my values, and being on this journey of unconditioning myself from all the limiting beliefs that I grew up with, and unearthing myself, my real self, which was buried under all these layers of conditioning, trauma, whatever you may call it. And I'm most proud of modeling that for my daughters and giving them a life and helping them create their life. I'm not giving it to them. They're doing it for themselves, but modeling that and supporting them that in the journey to live their truths is my biggest accomplishment. No matter how many things and awards and things I have on my resume, everything pales in comparison. Because when I see my daughters and the opportunities that they have and the freedom that they have to be themselves, and knowing that I broke the cycle, I broke that, like no woman from my family and for generations that ever walked away from abuse. And if I hadn't walked away, they probably would have faced the same kinds of challenges that I did or similar. But having broken that cycle and be able to give them a space to thrive and be their own people, and modeling that and doing that for myself as well, I think that's the thing that I always will cherish the most.
Well, you carve the path for them to move forward, right? And I think that's our greatest gift that we can give our children is as role models, as women and as people. How do we want to live our best lives? How do we want to rediscover who we really are internally? How do we listen to those voices? How do we act upon them? And how do we model ourselves so others can learn from our own experiences, whether they're good, bad, and they continue on. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you. So what's next for you? I know you're in med school, but what else are you?
2 years of remaining of med school and then residency. But those are things that keep going on. I think I'm also working on writing my second book. So
Nice.
That's exciting. And I can't disclose what it's about right now, but it's something very close to my heart. And a lot of actually what we've been talking about today. And I'm just also excited to see all the growth that my daughters are doing, because my older daughter is in journalism at Ryerson, and she's like she's a storyteller in her own right. Like, she's just phenomenal, and
she gets it from her mom.
The lens that she views the world through, and she's not afraid of asking really difficult questions. So she's definitely in a career that's meant for her.
Nice.
And my younger one, like, seeing where she goes and how she thrives and how she carves her own path. So lots of exciting.
It's exciting.
And
well,
feel like this is the time in our lives when we're actually thriving instead of just trying to do damage control and survive after trauma.
It's my course that I have is called "It's My Time Now." So it really is it really is our time now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to have you back when your second book is released.
Absolutely, yeah.
And your first book is getting turned into a show or a movie?
Yes, a TV show. So
nice.
That's in the works. It's being developed right now. So
wow, okay, wonderful. Look forward to seeing that. So we will have all your book link and everything on our show notes, and I would encourage our listeners to read Samra's book and to follow her, because she is a powerhouse and such an inspiration to women all over the world. And thank you for sharing your story. You've shared it many times, and I know it can't be easy every time you tell it. So appreciate you inspiring our audience today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And good luck at med school.
Thank you.
I'm sure Samra's story of resilience has inspired you as it did me. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, we are the ones who stand in our own way. All our fears are valid, but at the end of the day, life is all about choices. Are you going to let the fear prevail, or are you going to say, yes, I'm terrified, but I believe in this so much that I'm going to do this anyway? That is the definition of courage. Number 2, we often feel like we need to have all the ducks in the row and to have all the answers, but we don't need to have all the answers. The key is to be adaptable and have the faith and conviction in your abilities to figure things out. Number 3, am I going to succumb and give up, or am I going to keep on fighting? Because if I don't fight for my dreams, who will? Number 4, when people tell you you cannot do something, they are showing you their limits, not yours. Number 5, listen to that inner voice instead of all the other voices around you who say you can't. The things that are meant for us, they are already ours, and that inner voice is guiding us towards those things that are already ours. By not listening, we are actually doing a disservice to not only ourselves, but to the world by depriving the world of the unique gifts that only we have to offer. 6, we need to put the shame where it belongs, with the abusers. 7, healing is not a linear journey. You don't move on from trauma, you move on with it. Those experiences have left permanent imprints on our brains, bodies, and minds. Healing is a lifelong journey. 8, there is always going to be people ahead of you or behind you, but there is no race. How can you say someone is ahead or behind when you're going in different directions? 9, our healing is our responsibility. healing means you have the toolkit and the strategies to be able to help you through the ups and downs. It's okay to not be okay. It doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. And trust your journey. Be kind to yourself. 10. Seek help. There is no shame in seeking help. We owe it to ourselves to take care of ourselves. Seeking help is a sign of tremendous courage and vulnerability. Thank you so much for listening. As we are approaching spring, I encourage you to think more about what you want for yourself this season and take time for yourself. I mentioned in my last episode that I'm so excited to be a certified life transitions and core energy coach. I am here to help you rediscover your passions, release your inner obstacles, and gain confidence in yourself so you can lead a happy and fulfilled next stage of life. That is my mission, and I invite you to reach out to me for a complimentary call to discover what may be inside of you. I can help you bring it out into the world, my friend. I have a transformational coaching program which I'd love to share with you, so reach out to me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca. If you prefer groups, our first cohort of the year of our signature group coaching program, It's My Time Now, is launching on March 22nd. Contact me for more details and to apply to be a part of a small group of like-minded women. Again, thank you for being here, and have a beautiful, safe, and wonderful next few weeks. We will be taking 1 week's breaks, and we'll have our new episode in a couple of weeks. Until then, all my love and all my light. Take care.